Good afternoon. Welcome to today's CI Tools webinar. My name is Josh Osborne and I'm the product manager for the CI Tools here at Central Innovation. And this is a weekly webinar that we run to talk about things to do with CI Tools. This week I'm going to talk about stuff to do with upgrading to ArchiCAD 29. There's been quite a few more of you have been getting up and running, I guess, with 29 over the last week or so. And so we're just going to cover off a couple of things that are good to know about that, specifically about library loading. But before we get started, I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about licensing. But before we get into that, if you have any questions during the webinar today, please enter those in the chat panel wherever you're watching, and I will see if I can answer those while we are live, and if not, I'll get back to you later. If you think of anything that you wanted to ask but don't remember about it until later on, you can also email those through to us on nz.support@centralinnovation.com. Those will make their way through to the support team here and they can help you out. And if you also have any topics that you would like to see covered in future webinars, also send those through to nz.support@centralinnovation.com. I'm always on the lookout for topics to cover. Obviously, with 29 having just come out recently, we're going to be talking about that still probably for the next few weeks. But if you do have anything about that in particular that you'd like to see, or if you have anything not related to that in particular that you'd like to see covered later on, that would still be useful to know as well. So please do send those through if you have any ideas. That's all of the housekeeping for today, though. So obviously, what we're going to be looking at today applies to ArchiCAD 29. Some of it will also apply to ArchiCAD 28. So if you're not upgrading to 29, but you are upgrading some files to 28, when we look at the migration of library parts, that will also apply to you. You can do it in either version, but most of the other things are going to be ArchiCAD 29 specific. But yes, before we get started on looking at ArchiCAD 29 and migrating projects, the first thing I wanted to talk about was licensing. So as probably a lot of you know, because you're probably using them, Graphisoft have been moving to a cloud license-based system recently. So that is, they have your licenses are available in a sort of a stored pool online, rather than being a thing that you have to either physically plug into your computer or a soft license that you have to download to your computer. Now you just have a cloud license that is sort of online while you are using ArchiCAD, and then once you exit out of ArchiCAD, you kind of stop using the cloud license. A lot of you have probably already moved to this system already. And one of the things that we have been working on in the background, probably for the last 12 months or so, is enabling some of the sort of extra functionality of those cloud licenses with the CI tools as well. And with the recent release of ArchiCAD 29, we are very pleased to announce that the CI tools in ArchiCAD 29 will also support cloud licensing, floating in the same way or in a similar way to how ArchiCAD licenses work. So if you're using ArchiCAD 29 and you're using a cloud license, those are the two specific requirements for this. You need to be using ArchiCAD 29, you need to be using a cloud license in ArchiCAD 29. Your CI tools licenses will now allow you to float them. So that means that if you, for instance, are working in an office that has 10 ArchiCAD licenses on cloud licenses, and you have less than 10 CI tools licenses, so say you have 10 ArchiCAD licenses and 5 CI tools licenses, the way that the CI tools licenses will work now is that you will only use them when you actually use the CI tools. So for instance, in your office of 10 people, you could have 10 people using ArchiCAD. The first 5 people to try using the CI tools per day will grab the CI tools licenses that are available for you. Once the 6th person tries to use the CI tools, what will happen is dependent on what has happened with the other 5. But if all of the previous 5 people are still using their CI Tools licenses, you'll get an error message telling you that the CI Tools license can't be activated, which makes sense. You only have 5 CI Tools licenses, so you can only use 5 at a time. However, if one of the currently 5 people using CI Tools licenses exits out of ArchiCAD, so they quit the ArchiCAD session that they were using the CI tools in, that license will become available right away for the 6th person. So if you're person number 6, you try to use the CI tools and it says that you don't have a license available, but you know that you do have licenses in your office, what you can do is you can just go and find someone who is using the CI tools and say, hey, if you're finished using those, could you exit out of ArchiCAD so I can use them? And once they do that, you'll be able to use the tools right away. So previously, if you wanted to shuffle licenses around like this, you would have to contact us and get us to manually deactivate the license, or you would have to upload and download ArchiCAD licenses so that you use the same license as them. Now with cloud licensing, you don't have to do that anymore. You just have to either wait for them to exit ArchiCAD or wait for the timeout to happen. So when one of those first 5 people are using the tools, it's sort of an internal timer starts once they start using it. And if they don't use the tools again for half an hour, they will also automatically release their license. And then you'll be able to use that as well. So if person number 1 started using the tools 29 minutes ago and you try to use it and it says there's no license available, if you just wait a minute, of course you won't know that it was 29 minutes ago, but if you turn up 1 minute later, you will be able to use them. So that means that if someone starts doing work in the morning, they use the CI tools for something and then they don't use them for anything else as they are going, their licenses will become freed up and go back into the pool again for anyone else in the office who wants to use them later on. So that is, as I said, new with ArchiCAD 29 and only applies to cloud licenses. So ArchiCAD cloud licenses, if you're using ArchiCAD soft licenses, those still work the same way that they always have done. It just applies to cloud licenses. We are looking into the possibility of also applying something similar for soft licenses, but we don't have anything going for that yet. And most of you are probably moving to cloud licenses soon anyway. So that is going on there. All of this will happen essentially transparently to you, so you won't necessarily know that your CI tools have released your license. So if you start using the tools in the morning, you don't use them for over half an hour, the tools license will automatically release itself. But it's not going to send you a reminder or anything like that. Essentially, we want to get out of your way. We don't want to bother you with notifications about that sort of thing. So if you do start using the tools in the morning, it releases your license automatically, and then you come back and you try to use one of the tools again, it will just silently go and grab the license again if it's available to you still. So if you are using the tools infrequently during the day, it just means that it'll grab the tools fresh each time that you use them. So you don't need to worry about releasing your licenses or anything like that. The only time you need to do anything is if you're at your limit of CI tools licenses and someone else needs to use it right away, even though you only just used it a minute ago. The way to get around that is you just exit out of your ArchiCAD session and that will release the license. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any problems with the system or you just don't follow how it's working, please do contact us on technical support, nz.support@centralinnovation.com, and we can help you out with any issues you might be having with that. But we've tested it pretty thoroughly, and I'm confident that it will work well for you. And it also means that you can do that floating thing, which we haven't been able to do previously. So that is just, again, it's ArchiCAD 29 only and ArchiCAD cloud licenses only. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions or comments about that. All right, so with the licensing things out of the way, the other thing I wanted to talk about is library loading. So when you are migrating to ArchiCAD 29, there are some library things that you will need to do as part of that process. There's 2 main different things, and that is if you're migrating from ArchiCAD 27 or earlier, you will need to do something different than if you're migrating from ArchiCAD 28 to 29. So 27 or 26 or 25 to 28 or 29 is one process, and 28 to 29 is a different process. So I'll cover the 28 to 29 first, because that's the shortest and the quickest one, and then we will cover off the older than 27 or older method. So the main thing that we need to do is just that we need to load the ArchiCAD 29 libraries in place of the 28 ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up an ArchiCAD 28 project in ArchiCAD 29. So there's a couple of things that's going to happen, but the first thing is that you will probably see a bunch of error messages about version mismatches for the CI tools. That's expected, and that's what we're doing this process to fix effectively. So I'll wait for that to finish loading. Okay, so this is the error message that I mentioned. You'll get these for a handful of the tools. The reason this is happening is because you're opening an ArchiCAD 28 project in 29, but you will still be loading the ArchiCAD 28 libraries. And you're using, so effectively you're using ArchiCAD 29 add-ons and ArchiCAD 28 libraries. The CI tools don't like that. They have different versions on each of them. That's what this error message is telling us. It's just telling us that your versions are mismatched. So we're just going to click OK through all of these. There'll be a handful of them, but we're about to fix this up, so you can effectively ignore them for now. And once we save this project after we've done the fix, then this won't come up again for this project. So it's a one-time thing for each project. This is just because I have some old add-ons there. That's fine. We'll hit OK, and then the library will load as normal. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go into the library manager, and we're going to swap out those libraries. So you'll see that in my library manager, I have ArchiCAD library packages, got a whole list of those. And then I've got CI tools library packages, got a whole list of those as well. And if I select some, you'll see that the path is in the ArchiCAD 28 folder, and the same for the CI tools libraries. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the ArchiCAD 28 ArchiCAD libraries because we want to get the new functionality available in the ArchiCAD 29 library. And we're also going to do the same for the CI tools library packages because of the same reason, and also to get rid of the error messages. So we'll remove all of those, and we'll hit add, and then add in the 29 versions. So in your ArchiCAD 29 folder, we'll go to ArchiCAD library packages, and here you can select all of the libraries that you want to load. I'm just going to grab all of them for now, but obviously depending on where you are in the world, you'll probably not want to necessarily load all of those up, so you can pick and choose which ones you want. Hit open, and that will add them to the list. So we've got our list of ArchiCAD library packages, and then we do the same with the CI tools. So again, in our ArchiCAD 29 folder, we've got the CI tools library packages folder, and we'll just add all of those as well. Just a reminder that you can't, in ArchiCAD 28 and 29, when you are dealing with folders filled with library packages, you cannot load just the folder. You used to be able to do that in 27 and earlier. You could just load a whole folder and everything that was in it was load. That doesn't work with the library packages, so you do need to select the folder first and then select all the files in the folder and hit open, and that will add them all in. So we've got our two sets of library packages there. Now we can hit OK, and it will go through and it will load those new libraries for us. And then once this is done, we're effectively, the migration is done. All right, so that looks like it's done now. So if we just save our project now, we're not going to get blasted with those error messages about the versions anymore. And if I go back to the library manager, you'll see we have all of our 29 libraries loaded. So you can see the path there is ArchiCAD 29. So if you're migrating from ArchiCAD 28 to 29, that's all you need to do with regards to library management for the migration. Obviously, you still need to do all of the other usual migration steps. So if you're migrating your project, you want to get the libraries sorted first, then go through and check that all the attributes are fine, check your layout sheets, make sure all of the normal things that you would check to make sure that a project has migrated properly. But the main thing we're concerned about here is just getting those libraries right so you don't get nagged by the CI tools, and that will do that for you. So we just remove our ArchiCAD 28 library packages and load the ArchiCAD 29 library packages instead. So that's migrating from ArchiCAD 28 to 29. ArchiCAD 27 to 29 is a different thing. And the reason for that is because of the change to the library package system. So as you will have seen just now, I was loading the library package formats. Those won't have been available to you before in 27 because they're new in 28. And so if you're migrating a project from 27 or earlier, you do need to figure out what you're going to do with these. And there's a couple of different options. So I'm opening my ArchiCAD 27 project in 29 here at the moment, and you'll see that I get this dialog asking me if I want to migrate to my libraries. This has come up for all previous versions of ArchiCAD up till now as well, and the way to get it to load the libraries is by pressing this button here. However, there's a couple of extra things that you need to know about when you are migrating to 28 or 29. So the first thing is that there are two options about how you deal with your libraries when you're doing this migration. The first option is to just load the old format of libraries and continue as you were. So this is what I would recommend for any cases when you're migrating a project that is already partially documented in ArchiCAD. So if you have started working on it in 27, say, and you just want to migrate it through to 29 because that's what you're using now, I would recommend sticking with the old library format in that case and finishing the project using the old libraries and then starting your next new project using the new library format. There are a couple of cases, though, where you might want to migrate an older project to using the new library setup. And the main reason for that is because you are upgrading a template or something like a template. So if you have a project that you use sort of as the basis for a lot of your projects or something like that, you'll want to migrate that through so that it uses the new setup. Or you may have a very long-term project that you're working with in ArchiCAD, so you know that it's still going to continue being worked on for several years, and you just want it to be in the latest version. That's the other reason that you might want to do this. The reason why you need to pick which way you want to do is that if you use the old library format, the migration is relatively quick. It's quicker than the one that I just did just now. However, if you want to fully migrate it to using the new library package format, it's a much more time-consuming process and there's a lot more steps involved. So if you are thinking of doing that full migration, just know in advance it's going to take you a bunch of work to do, and you also need to read a bunch of documentation about it before you do it as well, because there are plenty of steps. You need to do things like converting your favorites and making sure your attributes have migrated and all sorts of things like that. So I only recommend doing it if you really need to do it, but we do have a helper to assist you with doing that as well. But what I'm going to do here first is I'll do option A, which is we keep using the old library format as it was, and we just continue working that way. So before you do this, before we get to this step here where it's asking us to migrate, you'll want to install the ArchiCAD Monolith Migration Library. You probably haven't heard of that before because it's only recently come into being, but if you go to MyCI and head to the ArchiCAD Resources section, you will see a thing called the ArchiCAD Monolith Migration Library, and you'll need to install that first if you're wanting to do any migrations using the old library. The old libraries are referred to as monolith libraries now. That's why it's called the Monolith Migration Library. But once you do install that Monolith Migration Library, you'll get a folder inside your Graphisoft folder called ArchiCAD Monolith Migration Libraries, and then your localization version. So I've got NZE here, but you may see AUS or INT or wherever you are. But this holds all of those migration libraries for us. And now if we open that 27 project in ArchiCAD 29, it will give us this question about, do we want to do the migration? We can hit the migrate button, and that will use the monolith migration library that we installed to load up versions of all of the library parts that will work for us. So let's just give it a minute to load the project. We'll skip that one. And that has loaded our project in for us. You can see it's quite spare looking because there aren't quite a lot of objects are missing. So what we'll need to do is go into our library manager. So we'll go File, Library Manager, and you'll see in here that we're loading that ArchiCAD monolith migration library. That's what the migration did, but we are missing the CI tools. So because we used to have the CI tools inside the ArchiCAD folder, that's no longer being loaded because we're using the monolith migration library now. So we need to put in the CI tools as well. So open up your library manager, click on the add button. And if you look inside your ArchiCAD 29 folder, you'll see that there is a CI tools monolith migration library folder here as well. So this is named a similar thing to what the ArchiCAD one is named. We're going to select that folder and hit open, and that will add our tools monolith migration library. So we have both sets of monolith migration libraries loaded. We can just hit OK now, and that's going to load up the CI tools as well. And then away we go. We don't need to do anything else after that. All right. So now if I go back to my library manager, you'll see that we don't have a bunch of warnings anymore. We've just got one duplicate. Not sure what that is, but everything has loaded pretty much the way that we would expect. And you can see in my preview here that we also have our coverings are looking fine, and our doors and windows and all of that. So those are all coming in from the libraries fine. So if you are migrating an existing project through to ArchiCAD 29, in most cases, this is what I would recommend doing. So you just keep going with that monolith migration library, finish the project, and then in your new project, you use the new library format. This is by far the easiest and quickest option. So once you save that project, that's done, and you won't need to do that again for this project. Now, the third option, or the second of the two options when dealing with migrating from 27, is to fully migrate your libraries. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reopen this project, but this time we're going to forcibly migrate to using the library packages instead of the monolith migration library. So when we get presented with this message about migrating our libraries, we're just going to hit skip here because we need to manually set up our library management. Okay, so we're going to get these error messages again, similar to before. It's because it's loading an older version library, so it's complaining about those. Once we fix this migration, that is going to go away again. So we just click OK through it the first time here. And then once we fix it, we won't have to deal with it again. So it's going to load our project up. You'll see that we do have our old libraries loaded here, so everything looks kind of okay. But what we want to do now is we want to force everything to use the new library. So if I select one of these roof coverings, for instance, and go and have a look in here, you can see that the reason it's working is because it's literally loading our ArchiCAD 27 library still, which we don't want to do. So what we need to do is we need to migrate those library parts to using the new format. So if I go to my library manager, I'm going to add in the new library packages. So ArchiCAD library packages, select all of those. This is similar to what we did with the 28 to 29, and then CI tools library packages as well. Load those all up. Now we're going to get a big mess of duplicates, obviously, because we have two of everything now. But that's fine. That's part of this first step here. So I'll hit OK and let it load those up. Okay, so now that's loaded. Won't have made any visual difference, but what we're going to do now is we're going to do the migration. So we go to our CI Tools menu and go down to Launchpad. That's a free tool that we have available. And we're going to choose the option to migrate library parts. It will tell me that nothing's selected. So if I hit migrate, it's going to migrate the whole project. I wouldn't recommend doing this with a selection because there's just not really any reason to do that. So generally I would do it with nothing selected. Hit migrate, it will do its thing and then it will tell us what it did. Okay, so 71 out of 295 library parts were successfully migrated. So what this means is that there are 295 objects in use in the project at the moment, and it found 71 that it could migrate for us. Now, you'll probably almost never get 295 of 295, and that's because it's talking about all objects. So in my case, a lot of my objects that I'm using are CI tools, and they don't need migrating, so they aren't counted towards that total. It's only the ArchiCAD library, standard library objects that are being migrated. So obviously I had 71 of them. It's done that migration, so I can hit OK, and it has made that change now. So if I select any objects in my project, so for instance, if I select this kitchen layout here, you can see that the kitchen layout is now loading from the standard, the new libpack format. So that migration has worked. So what we can do now is just remove the libraries that we don't need anymore. So we'll go back into the library manager and we'll select ArchiCAD Library 27 and remove that. We can also remove ArchiCAD migration libraries if you had those loaded. We don't need those anymore. And MEP library, don't need that anymore either. So now we just have our CI Tools library packages and ArchiCAD library packages. I also had a couple of random extras as well, but you won't have those. But those two are the main ones. And because we've migrated to them now, if we hit OK, that will load just the new libraries in the project and everything should still work fine. There is one exception to that, and that is stairs, which you'll see in a second. And the reason for that is just because our tool isn't able to migrate the stair objects just yet. So you will need to manually migrate those ones. So the tool has gone through and done it for the majority of our objects. And then we can finish up the process by just selecting our stair and going in and swapping all of the objects in here for their new versions. So you can see under flight beam, OpenStringer 23 is being used on this one. We need to switch that to the newer format, OpenStringer, and you'll see it appear there. You need to go through all of the settings for your stairs and do that with each of them. You'll see that they're using old versions on mine for most of these, so we just need to go through and swap those. But aside from that, everything else has been migrated, and we're using the new library package format for everything. Now, there's still quite a lot of work to be done in this case. We need to do a favorite migration amongst other things. So please do read the documentation on our website. So if you go to MyCI and head to the knowledge base area, there is a document on how to do the migration, which tells you all of the additional steps that you'll need to do, as well as the library migration. So I do recommend reading that because it is not a small task doing this, and you do need to make sure that you get all of the steps done. Otherwise, things will be missing once you try and start actually using it. So it's best to do them first so that you don't run into problems later. All right, that's all I have time for today. I don't have time for any questions now, sorry, so I will check on those and respond to you in a support ticket if there's anything there. But otherwise, thanks for your time, everyone. As I said, next week we will be looking at ArchiCAD 29. Again, we'll probably look at the new functionality in the fit out and annotate tools next week so that you can see what you can do with the new functions and also how you can use them. But if you do have any questions about any of this that you want to see covered in the webinar, please do let me know via nz.support@centralinnovation.com, and that will make its way through to me. Thanks for your time, everyone, and I'll catch you in the next one.